Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly believe that they can do what they want, when they want, and nobody else matters. And in this episode, nothing is more entitled than pretending to know the owner to get what you want. That's right, guys, Karens are getting called out left and right, and it's super embarrassing. I hope you enjoy the stories. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So my mom owns a small independent sandwich shop in our town, and one of her employees called sick, so I worked half a shift on Thursday, basically 4 hours, to help cover the lunch rush. I'm working on the sandwich line. Now, we make all manners of sandwiches, but this one particular sandwich is more popular than all the others. So much so that we tend to run out of the materials to make them within only a few hours. It's very popular in my town. Anyway, the person in question was a young businessman or something who comes into the store wearing a suit and tie. The guy, I kid you not, walks right up to my sandwich counter during lunch rush, cuts in front of a line of 15 people, and pulls out a list of all things. He then throws the list down and says, "I need 8 sandwiches. 5 of your most popular sandwich, 2 roast beef, 1 turkey." And that's when I stop him and say, "Sir, I'll be more than happy to help serve you once I've helped the customers ahead of you." I then point at the lineup of 15 other people that he's tried to cut in front of. And the guy says, "Excuse me?" I then try to tell him again that he's cut in line, and he says, "I heard you, smartass. I don't have time for this. Do you even know who I am?" And I'm thinking, oh boy, here we go. I say to him, "No, sir, I'm afraid I don't." And before I could say another word, he cuts me off and says, "I'm the franchise owner from the next town over. I basically own this store, so make my sandwiches. Unless you want to be out of a job, are you disobeying the owner's orders?" And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh good, one of these guys. I've heard of them. But to be honest, up until he came along, I've never had anyone like that. I've never seen one for myself. And to clarify, we're a small, independently owned shop. There's no franchises, and my mom happens to be in the back. In the space of about 5 seconds, I'm trying to decide what best course of action would be to deal with this guy. And it ended up being the worst possible thing I could do to the poor idiot. I played along and said, "Oh dear, I'm so sorry, sir. I wasn't told you ordered here. Please wait right here. I'll get the business owner. She'll want to apologize to you personally." I then shout, "Hey mom, the franchise owner from the next town over wants to see you." And as soon as I said that, I've never seen a man backpedal so hard in my whole life. As soon as my mom walks out, you could see his face turn ghostly white, and the guy left without his sandwiches. Now that attempt at skipping the whole line during lunch rush was bold as heck, guys. I'm not only the owner, I'm the franchise owner. Ain't that something? Like, at least know if it's a franchise or not before you make that bold claim, right? Like, good job. Now you don't have yummy sandwiches for the 8 people you're picking up for. Alright, so I worked in the menswear department of a pretty rundown bridal store. It was generally quiet, business was slow, and thus only myself and my manager were working this particular day. So about an hour before closing time, me and my manager were ironing shirts, putting them out, general stuff, when this older lady, a Karen, walks in with a large box. I spot the large box and say, "Good afternoon, are you here to make a return?" The old lady smirks and says, "No, I'm not." That's when I say, okay, well, is there any way I can help you today?" The Karen is still smirking, and she says, "No, but I think that I can help you." And at this point, I'm a bit confused. I look at my manager, who kind of shrugs her shoulders and walks over to us, neither of us knowing where this is going. So my manager says, "Hello, what brings you here today?" That's when the lady puts the box on the floor and she stands triumphantly with her arms crossed and says, "I have something in here that I think you'll be very interested in." And before either of us can say anything, she whips the lid off the box and she resumes her previous position, still with that grin plastered on her face. Inside the box is an electric blue fedora hat. My manager sees it and stifles a laugh, and she takes a step back, leaving me to deal with this woman. I say to the Karen, "Ma'am, we don't sell those kinds of hats here." Karen says, "Yes, I know. Well, I bought this hat for my son's prom 15 years ago. And when I did, the owner of the shop, who happens to know my husband, said he loved it. and if I wanted to ever sell it, he would pay me a hefty sum. And we're talking thousands of dollars. So today, I'm here to take him up on his offer. At this point, I'm trying not to laugh. The woman is still standing there grinning like she's pulled the greatest trump card that the world's ever seen. And that hat was probably the worst condition it could have possibly been in, packed inside a comically oversized box. Another thing to note is our store only opened 3 years ago. There was no way it was our wealthy owner she spoke to. And to be completely honest, I don't think anyone would pay a hefty sum for this piece of junk, let alone him. I say to Karen, I'm sorry ma'am, but you must have us confused with another store. And besides, we're a shop. We sell and rent items, we don't buy. Hearing me say that, she gets agitated and says, No. It was this shop. My husband's friend said he would pay me for it, and that it would be an honor to sell in his shop. So you need to buy it off me. I'll sell it to you for cheaper than what he wanted. At this point, I'm trying to keep my composure, and I had to turn around to pretend to look at something to stifle a laugh. I then say, I'm sorry to tell you ma'am, but you're mistaken, we don't sell these kinds of hats. The old lady says, but you will sell this hat. The owner wants it. You'll be in trouble with the owner, don't make me call him. It's at this point, the manager walks back to us to intervene. She tells the woman, Madam, you have the wrong person. We do not buy independent items unless an order's been specifically placed for them. The old lady's shrieking at this point and says, the owner wants me to sell this hat. People want this hat, why won't you buy it? You haven't even asked me how much I'm willing to sell it for. I then say to her, ma'am, please, if you look behind you, you'll see that the only hats we sell are top hats, and even those aren't popular. We have little demand for hats, let alone for one as unique as yours. It's at this point, the old lady seems to get the picture. She huffs, angrily packs away the hat, and then picks up the box, glaring at me and says, you will regret this. The owner's gonna talk to you tomorrow. I say to her, I'm sure I will, and I'm looking forward to that talk, ma'am. She then stares at me for a second before heading towards the door, muttering to herself that we're useless staff. And just before she reaches the door, she turns around and half shouts up to us, you will regret this. You don't know who I am. Emphasizing the word will. I then nod and say, okay, have a nice day. Before she could respond, my manager cuts in and says, there's a charity shop down the road if you'd like to try there, ma'am. The woman then left. Oh my goodness, guys. Like, I don't know if times are tough and people are getting desperate for money or what, but that was an incredible attempt by Karen to sell some closet junk to a high-end store. And seriously, props to OP for not bursting out laughing in that woman's face, because I definitely would have. But with that said though, I think I would have entertained her some more and asked her how much exactly she wanted for the hat. Because we'll never know, guys. Like, what if she said something outrageous like, oh, it's worth $10,000. But for 5 ultra low payments of $999.99, it'll be yours today. Like, wouldn't that have been something? So I've worked in retail for 6 years, and I've seen and heard so many things. Currently, I'm working at a big box store that has an electronics center. Normally, we're not allowed to touch anyone's devices, but every now and then, we'll help customers load minutes on their phone or show them how certain things work on their phone. That's basically the most we can do since we just sell electronics. We aren't required to do anything beyond that. Today, I had a customer come to the counter with his brother. They were in their 40s or so. The customer asked me if I could look at his phone because he accidentally fell asleep on it and accidentally pressed buttons, so now it's on emergency mode. I was super confused. I'm usually pretty tech savvy, so out of curiosity, I had to look at it. The conversation went something like this. The guy basically says, please, I'm a truck driver and I have a long way to go. I can't afford to buy another phone until I get paid. You have to unlock it. He then hands me his phone and I notice it's an Android, some kind of little prepaid smartphone. So I flip it over, and when the screen comes on, it shows a notification text that says in all caps, bring my phone back, bitch. And under it, it said call owner with the call button lit up green. So I call the number and it went to a voicemail. The phone number was from Mississippi. I say to him, I'm sorry sir, there's not much I can do. It's locked down by the owner. The customer very aggressively says, I am the owner. I told you I fell asleep on it and it somehow locked itself like this. Are you going to unlock it for me or not? I say to him, if that's the case, can you put in your password? I then swipe the screen to the left, pulling up the password screen, and it's the only way to unlock it. That's when the customer tells me, I didn't create a password. It shouldn't have a password. I don't know what happened. At this point, he's yelling, attracting a crowd of people. I say to him, well, sir, it seems the owner locked this phone down. And since you don't have the password, you won't be able to unlock it. If you are the owner, you can go to your service provider and they'll help further. I'm just a sales rep. I'm not qualified to unlock phones, nor am I required to. That's when the customer's brother chimes in and says, he is the owner. I can call the number right now and the phone will ring. The guy then decides to call the number and nothing happened. At this point, I'm confused as to why they would think a big box store could unlock this phone. They both continue yelling at me, and that's when I had enough and said, you know what, give me a second and I'll call my manager. He might be more able to help you out since he's pretty tech savvy. The customer says, I don't need no damn manager. You unlock this phone right now or else. I then asked if he's threatening me, and then radioed the manager to come to the photo counter since electronics is attached to photo. And as soon as they heard that the manager's coming, they run to the entrance and they left the store. I told management what happened, and they were just as astonished that they brought in a stolen phone to try to get me to unlock it. But what they didn't know is I didn't hang up. I left it on voicemail so the owner could hear me and the customer's conversation. I hope the details I gave helped him out. Most likely they're gonna trash the phone, but you never know. Guys, they say thieves are stupid, but this is next level dumb. And what an outrageous lie, right? Yeah, I fell asleep on my phone and somehow while I was asleep, it accidentally locked itself and set a password. Yeah, right. I would have been like, sir, so you're telling me that your back or butt or leg or whatever, while you were asleep, swiped the lock screen to unlock it, somehow had the accuracy to manage to go into settings, scroll down to security and privacy, hit password, then hit device unlock, hit screen lock, and then was able to choose between setting a pattern or a number password, and it set a gosh darn password. Like, sir, go home, you're a thief. And yes, guys, I have an Android phone, and I looked at it, and that's the steps it takes to set a password. Like butt dialing someone, highly likely, but locking a phone while you're asleep, definitely not happening. And this person shares their experience and says, I used to run a cell phone store. And this sounds a lot like my one genius customer. The guy claimed that he never received his phone in the mail and he was demanding I replace it. So I pulled up his account and looked through the notes. The phone was activated on his number the day prior. On a hunch, I told him, so let me call customer care and see what I can do. Instead, I dialed his number. The idiot then pulled out the exact same phone that he was claiming he didn't receive and he answered it. The guy ends up flipping out on me and threatening to sue me because, quote, you tricked me. And I had to have the police come and remove him. Again, guys, I'm shaking my head so hard. Like, the guy literally said, you tricked me, I'm calling the police, after he tried to steal from the store. Some frickin' people, I tell ya. I used to work at a grocery store in a ski town. Our store was a block off the main streets, and people would often park in our parking lot. Then they would walk to the main street and take a bus to the ski area. We would get our main deliveries on Tuesday and Friday. In order to get the semis into the loading dock, we had to block off a small portion of the parking lot. This is the middle of ski season and the truck's late, so I'm asked to watch the parking lot to make sure people are not parking where they shouldn't be. And that's when a large SUV pulls up. Someone gets out and proceeds to move the traffic cones and then tries to park. I tell them that we're waiting for delivery and if they could move their car out of the coned off area. They literally moved their car one space and it was still in the coned off area. I then see them leaving with all their ski gear. I walk back across the parking lot to get them to move it again, but they're too far away from the store by this point. The delivery eventually arrives and we're forced to tow the car because the semi-truck can't get in now. The tow company arrives and they take away the car, and we get the delivery parked and unloaded. About an hour later, we get a phone call asking for Mike. Now, we do have a couple of employees named Mike, so I ask which Mike they're looking for. The guy then screams in the phone, the Mike who towed our damn car. Have him know that I personally know the owner, and he's gonna lose his job. I then tell them that I'm gonna find someone to address their call. So the guy speaks to a manager, and then he comes in the store, still in his ski gear. They tell the manager that they were towed while they were in the store shopping, despite being caught red-handed due to the ski gear. They then decide to call the police on us and have us arrested. So the police show up and basically tell them that there's nothing they could do. They also mention the ski gear to the family. The police then say the only thing they can do is give them a ride to the tow company lot to get their car. The family claimed that we had an arrangement with the tow company to trick people into parking there and take their money and then split it. We never had an arrangement with them, and we only towed when it was the last resort. Again, I can't believe some people, guys. Like, first, the idiot had the audacity to move traffic cones to have a parking spot, which that in itself is already a super entitled thing to do, and then he calls cops to arrest them for having him towed. Like, does this guy live in his own little world where he thinks he can't do any wrong? And guys, I'm also amazed that the cops offered him a ride after they showed up and learned the real story. Like, they should have given the guy a ticket for wasting their time. That's what they should have done. Okay, so at the time, I thought I was in the right, but I'm second guessing myself after my husband had a go at me. I'm a 29-year-old female, and my husband is 27, and we live in a cul-de-sac. Everyone's too close to one another, and that means people are naturally in each other's business. Right from the beginning, I had issues with one of our neighbors. She's the type of woman that lets her children wander about without a care. But that's not the worst part. She also has an uncanny skill for talking the neighbors into babysitting for her. I'm normally the type to say no, but even I've been roped into it way too many times. Yesterday, she came knocking on my door again, so I pretended I wasn't home. The woman continued to knock harder, and I thought she would yank the letterbox right off. So with that, I went to answer. She quickly said a few sentences that I didn't quite understand, and she said she would be back on Sunday. The woman has 6 children, ranging from 6 months to 7 years old. I told her that I couldn't watch the kids, and she said the cab was waiting for her. I tried to grab her hand to stop her from leaving, and I said I was unable to, and she just ran off and got in the cab. I was pissed, and that was putting it mildly. I waited 40 minutes, and then I sent her a text saying that if she couldn't pick them up in 10 minutes, that I would call children's services. She, of course, didn't answer the text, so I called her again, and she didn't pick up on the first 2 rings, but she picked up on the third. I told her the same thing again, and she tried to tell me that it was way too late for her to come back, as she was out of the city. She told me if I didn't want to watch them, to drop them off at Jennifer's, the 68-year-old lady with health issues living on the opposite side of me. I then repeated that if she wasn't here in 10 minutes, she could pick them up at the local police station, if they decided that she was a fit enough mother. She then said a few bad words and told me that I would never. So I did, as in the moment it felt like she was baiting me. After phoning child services, I sent her a text saying it was done. She then phoned me back and said she was halfway to the town she was going to and that she would murder me if that was true. That's when I sent her a video when child services picked them up. The police were there too, as they said they often tag along for collecting abandoned children, just in case something criminal's happened, and they asked a lot of questions about the mother. With that said, last night, me and my husband had a huge fight. My husband was in foster care, and he said I should have declined at the door, instead of waiting 40 minutes before calling children's services, when the mother couldn't pick them up in 10 minutes. He said I had other options, like not opening the door, or running after her and throwing the children in the cab instead of giving her silent consent. He also said that I did it on purpose, as the mother offered Jennifer as an alternative, so why hadn't I done that? In my defense, I'm not comfortable to hand over children to a third party. And also, good manners say that you don't show up on an elderly lady's doorstep and give her 6 unruly children to deal with for a few days, especially with her health problems. I would have never lived down that shame. My husband argued that once I dropped them off at Jennifer's, it would no longer be my business, but something between the mother and our other neighbor. He told me that anything that happens to those children in care is on my head. And then he told me things that he himself experienced and what he knew of others in care had experienced. I haven't slept all that much, and my husband left for work without speaking to me. I wonder if I should go back to child services and say that I overreacted, or that it was a misunderstanding and find a way to make it up to the children and get them out of there. I had no idea that foster care was that bad, so am I the a-hole? So yeah, basically everyone came and defended OP, guys, and they all basically said the same thing, that OP wasn't the a-hole for doing that, as it's not the woman's first time leaving her 6 kids with neighbors last minute. I would never just leave my kids for a week with someone who clearly doesn't want to watch them in the first place. And I do agree with a lot of people saying that she's a neglectful mother. Like, you can't just dump your 6 kids anytime you want on a person who's practically a stranger to you. I think the husband needs to acknowledge how neglectful that mom is. So yeah, with all that said, guys, let me know what you think. If you're in OP's shoes, would you be doing the same thing? Would you be calling police, child services, or would you be watching those kids and doing that mom a favor? So before we end the episode, guys, a wonderful listener happened to animate one of my all-time favorite stories, and I thought I'd share it with you guys because I think it's awesome. So here it is. So this takes place back in the landline days, and 1 phone per household, and it's another wrong number tale. When I was growing up, our phone number was 1 number from that of the pizzeria 1 town over. Ours ended in 05, and theirs ended in 04. So of course, we would regularly get calls from people who had dialed the wrong number, which wasn't a problem. We would just explain quickly that they had the wrong number and they needed to call something something 04 and not 05. They would apologize and we would never hear from them again. Then, one day, when I was 14 years old, home alone with my youngest brother, we get a call from a guy who wants the pizzeria. So he gets the spiel, and that's it. 2 days later, the guy calls again, and we give him the same spiel. 1 day later, we tell him the same thing. We don't hear from the guy for about a week or so I assumed he finally managed to get the number right. Well, it'll come as no surprise, as I'm posting here, that the guy did not. So approximately a week after the last call, he calls again. And at this point, the early teen me is starting to get annoyed with this guy because we usually get these calls 4 or 5 times a year, but this guy's now managed to get it wrong 4 times in 2 weeks. But I still give him the same answer. We are not a pizza shop. But 2 days later, the guy calls again, and teen me thinks that it's a good idea to actually take the guy's order, as I've joked about it with my parents before. So I do. This was a pickup-only place, and I worked in a bistro at the time, so I was good at taking orders. So the phone rings, I recognize the number, so I pick up and say, "This is Town Name Pizza. How may I help you?" The guy says, "Yeah, hey, I would like a number 2, a 32, 11, and a 4. Something along those lines." And teen me says, "Yeah, that'll be ready in 25 minutes. The guy says, "Great, see you then." The guy doesn't call back later in the evening to complain or anything. He does, however, call back some days later. The phone rings, I recognize the number again. I pick up and say, "This is Town Name Pizza. How may I help you?" The guy says again, "Hello, I would like a 2, a 32, 11, and a 4. I say to him, "Okay, yeah, we're really busy today, so it's gonna be about 45 minutes before it's ready." And that's when he says, "Okay, just make sure you actually write it down this time. I don't want to sit on my ass and wait again because you can't write down 4 numbers and a name." I respond, "Oh yeah, we're so sorry about that. It won't happen again. I've already written it down and we'll start making them in a bit." The guy says okay. And at this point, 14-year-old me has started to feel kind of bad about this, as I've always been pretty by the book. And straight up lying and causing this guy problems has made me feel kind of bad. Until later the same evening. The phone rings again, and I pick up, and the guy screams at me saying, "Effing stop that. I know you're not the pizzeria. They told me they never got my calls. I had to sit and wait an hour before I got my pizza because of you. Do you think you're effing funny, you effing a-hole?" I say to him, I'm sorry, I just got tired of you calling all the... And that's when he interrupts me and says, "I don't effing care. I will find your house, go there, and beat the living crap out of you. Only children think this is funny." The guy screamed threats at me for quite a bit, so I decided to do something. The guy's phone number was stored in the phone, so it was easy to get his address and identity, and he gets picked up by the police. And he has to explain why he threatened me, but in the end, there was really no evidence to do anything with, so he ended up getting a verbal lashing. And the guy never called for pizza again. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our / entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up, and I hope you didn't shake your heads too hard because the stories were ridiculous. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's in our r/I don't work here lady, where a Karen harasses OP thinking that they're a nobody, but it turns out OP is her new boss. It's such a ridiculous story, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.